last 24 hours have been insane, and pretty much everything points towards that the war with Iran is going to restart. In fact, America seems to have sent 4 aircraft carriers to Iran, despite there being a ceasefire. And so, here's all the news from just the last 24 hours, because some of this stuff you won't have even heard about. First, I'm going to cover the most important part, the part you came here for. America's sending 4 aircraft carriers to Iran. Seriously, the US already has the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Harry Truman in the Middle East. They're either off the coast of Iran, around the Houthis in Yemen, etc. Well, the USS Gerald R. Ford has actually been dispatched there too now. It was being repaired in Greece after a fire ripped through the entire ship, injured hundreds of sailors. Anyway, that's been repaired and it's now being sent back to the Middle East. So that makes 3 aircraft carriers. But now we're getting reports that a 4th is on the way. The USS George W. Bush, that is currently off the coast of South Africa, appears to be on the way too. All of these carriers have their own strike groups, and what we believe now is that about 60,000 American troops are in the Middle East, ready to invade. Not in bases, no. 60,000 troops on board ships, ready to invade at the single command of the US president. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that though, because I'd just be ranting. All you need to know is that that is a lot of ships on the way, and there's many things to suggest, which I'm going to tell you why the war might restart. But first, before I tell you why it might restart, you might want to know why it was suspended. Obviously, the US signed that 10-day ceasefire with Iran, but now we seem to have another reason why they might have. Well, a report came out that in the 42 days of war with Iran, the US launched over 850 of their Tomahawk cruise missiles at Iran. Those are by far the most important weapon the US was using in the war. Well, it turns out, due to a new report now, that there is only about 3,000 Tomahawk cruise missiles left in the US. If you're using over 800 missiles a month, it won't take long to go through 3,000, which might be one of the reasons why the war was suspended, because the US doesn't want to risk running out of weapons. That just wouldn't be a good look, and it also means that they wouldn't be able to carry out the type of attacks that they want to. These are the same Tomahawk cruise missiles that were also used to bomb that girls' school in Iran, by the way, so whether that was done on purpose or an accident, we don't really know, but yeah, I thought I'd just mention that. Either way, whilst we're on the topic of Iran, there's still stuff you need to know. One of the main things being that today, Ukraine came out and announced that they actually shot down an Iranian drone during the war. That was pretty crazy in itself, to be fair. So this makes sense. Obviously, Ukraine has quite a lot of experience in shooting down Iranian drones already. If you don't know, Russia uses the Iranian Shahed drones against Ukraine in their war. They used upgraded and advanced versions, and so Ukraine has quite a lot of information when it comes to shooting down these Shahed drones. They're pretty skilled at it, to say the least, after many years of doing it. And so as Iran started firing those same Shahed drones at other Middle Eastern countries during the war, those same countries called in Ukraine for help. Zelensky did a bit of a tour around the Middle East, and at the same time, they also delivered air defense systems, etc. Now, Ukraine maintained the fact that they weren't going to be shooting down the drones. They were just going to be providing the intelligence to do it. Well, we now know, thanks to Zelensky himself in a news statement yesterday, that Ukraine did actually shoot down the drones. They lied, they said they wouldn't, but they shot them down. Now, Zelensky did say, quote, "This was not about a training mission or exercises, but it was about support in building a modern air defense system that can actually work." Basically, Ukraine was just trying to use this as a way to make money and sell systems to the Middle East. To be fair, they probably did a good job of that now that they've announced they shot down a drone. But the main point is, which is probably why this has only just been announced yesterday, is because Iran said that if they found out Ukraine did this during the war, they'd attack Ukraine. Now that there's a peace deal, it makes it very unlikely that Iran will break that and attack Ukraine, of all countries. So that's why Zelensky has come out and announced it, but it's still a really big announcement that you need to know happened during the war. I mean, I have been saying there's a chance the war will restart, and it is, but it's also worth knowing that today Trump said Iran has agreed to, quote, everything. Specifically, they've agreed apparently to giving up their enriched uranium to the US. I find that very unlikely. In fact, Iran has actually denied that they agreed to that since. But Trump still came out and said they, quote, have agreed to everything. He also said, quote, we'll go down and get the uranium with them, and then we'll take it, and we'll be getting it together. He said the US and Iran are going to be working together to hand over Iran's enriched uranium to the US. I find it very unlikely that Iran is going to hand over something worth billions of dollars to an enemy, which can also be used to make nuclear weapons. I think it's unlikely, and that kind of leads me into the next point, and that is that China has actually come out and agreed to be the party that takes the enriched uranium. That way the US gets what they want. Iran gets rid of their enriched uranium, and Iran doesn't have to give it to an enemy. China is an ally of Iran, and the US understands that China will take it if they say they will. And so maybe China will be a mediator here. That is quite a big offer. Russia has also offered to do the same, but of course Russia isn't as big an ally with the US as China is. I mean, I wouldn't exactly call China an ally of the US, but still, because because they're superpowers, they get along better than Russia and the US. Although, even though there is stuff hinting towards the US might be wanting to go back into Iran, there is talks about peace still. Trump said he'll go to Pakistan and meet with the Iranian leadership. That would be the first confirmed talks of Trump with any Iranian government officials. Pakistan, though, said, quote, "Who will come, how big the delegation will be, who will stay and who will go is for those parties to decide." Pakistan said, quote, "As a mediator, it's important for us to keep the talks confidential," which is why they didn't say when Trump will be coming or who he'll be coming with. This also isn't a confirmed visit. Trump just said he'd be interested in going. But JD Vance, the vice president, did go last week to speak to Iranian officials. And so if the vice president goes, it's actually likely that the president himself could go. There's still more news though. The US was spotted yesterday looking for something in the northern Red Sea. A P-8 Poseidon intelligence gathering plane was actually flying over the Red Sea, gathering intelligence on something. It circled for about 2 hours watching something. We don't know exactly what it was, but I have a theory. There's actually many reports coming out that there was Chinese submarines in the Middle East during the war with Iran. To be fair, that wouldn't surprise me. China's got submarines everywhere. And so it's totally possible that a Chinese submarine was watching Israel as it was in the northern Red Sea, and then the US found it, and so they started watching it as well. To be fair, countries are always watching each other and each other's submarines, so this is nothing crazy, but it's still something worth knowing about. Flight radar tracking information showed this. It's public information. We don't know exactly what the US was looking for, but the theories point towards it being a Chinese submarine. On the topic of China, though, today China came out and unveiled the Chinese Y-30 transport aircraft. It's a direct competitor to the American famous C-130 Hercules. The only difference is China claims this Y-30 is way better, and to be fair, the stats do prove that. China wants the countries of the world to start buying this Chinese transport aircraft compared to the American C-130 like they currently do. They say this Y-30 is not only bigger, faster, costs less, it has better materials it's made out of, but it can also transport much heavier loads. The C-130 can only carry about 20 tons, whereas this Chinese Y-30 can carry 30 tons and go longer distances. And so really, there's many incentives for other countries to buy this Chinese transport aircraft compared to the worse C-130, the American version. Not to mention China kind of ironically made it in the same shape as the C-130, I guess just kind of to rub it in the face of America. That's probably the only reason. But still, this is really quite a big deal, and it's definitely going to change how other countries deal with America when there's cheaper options available. I don't know if you can tell, I'm currently in Bali, and like, it's so noisy here. There's music playing downstairs. There's the mosque going on behind me. Not that I've got a problem with the mosque going on. It's kind of cool, actually. But it's very noisy in Bali. And motorbikes going past all the time. Yeah. Really cool view, though. It's like a sunset at the minute. So, really cool. Come to Bali if you are available. It's super cheap. This place we're staying in at the minute costs like less than an apartment does in London. Also, as I said, it's sunset. That's why it's like super dark at the minute. I guess the video started off a bit brighter. Now it's like super dark. Apart from all the noise though, I bet you have definitely learned something in this video, and a hell of a lot is happening in the world. One last point is that India was actually invited by the UK and France to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz. That's kind of vague at the minute. India hasn't accepted or denied that, so I'm not going to spend much time talking about it. They were just invited. But the UK is planning on leading a 40-country coalition to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz to escort commercial ships through, clear mines, etc. They won't be carrying out military force against Iran, they say, but now they've invited one of Iran's allies to join that. India, of course, is an ally of Iran, and so if India does accept this and they send warships to the Strait of Hormuz to try and reopen it, it will actually damage Indian and Iranian relations. And so it'll be very interesting to see how Iran actually responds to this, whether they just let them carry on, or whether they try and put sanctions onto India. We know how easy it is after the last 2 months for Iran to just switch up on their allies. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, I started this video with the US sending 4 aircraft carriers to Iran though. But to understand why that is such a big deal, you need to know what else the US has sent. And yesterday, the US announced they're sending another 10,000 troops to Iran. That is a massive escalation of the conflict so far, and it actually suggests the US might be going back in for another ground invasion. And so to really understand the magnitude of the US possibly sending 4 aircraft carrier fleets to Iran, you need to know about them sending those troops yesterday. It's arguably more important than everything I've told you in this video. And so to make sure you haven't wasted your time watching this video, you need to know what else happened yesterday, which caused what happened today. So to make sure you haven't wasted your time, click here to watch that video, because the US sent 10,000 troops to Iran. And really, this could change everything. So click here to watch this, and if you have seen it, come back tomorrow for the next daily news recap, where I cover all of the news from just the last 24 hours.